Hello everyone, welcome to YouTube Model Builders Tuesday night presentation. Tonight we have a good pleasure to having Chris Healy, Andy Crawford, and Troy from Pacific North Central, and Andy is from N&W, and Chris is from LRM. Then we got Dave Vallejos from DNS Railroads. We're going to be discussing JMRI basics overview. This is going to be this part one of 6 different series having to do with JMRI. This is going to be, the first 2 are going to be basics. The first one's going to be on how to find the software on the internet, go to the website, download it, and an overview of all the different functions that you'll have once you hook it up to a track. We probably won't get as far as hooking it up to a track tonight. Any questions or anything like that, kind of keep it to kind of a small minimum for right now until we get going down a little bit, and I will answer them as I go along. I have put all the links out there to the panel and to watch this show this evening. Just kind of a overview. We do still have the big build contest going on right now. The big build contest ends in September 30th is the last day. Eric Hall from IMRROCOM, he is the one that's doing this for Mike. It turns out to be that we have quite a few actual participants in this. We've got 20 entries into it so far. That's not bad. I imagine that's all that there's going to be, since it is September 30th is the last day to get everything turned in. Another thing we got going on is the live show itself. Our last one was a really good one. We had Miles Hell on there, and if you guys did not get to watch the show live, it is on YouTube Model Builders YouTube channel. You can go there and check it out. Our next one is October 17th. Of course, that's on a Saturday at 10 p.m. I think that's Central or Eastern time. They do give a lot of good door prizes for all of those highways and byways. They put off an awesome road striping kit. Central Valley Works Incorporated, they put off a trestle bridge kit for HO or N-scale, and I know a couple guys that have gotten them, and they've turned out to be really good kits. Long Shadowed Trees, he gives out a 6-pack of fallen different colors. I think that they've probably changed that up now since fall is here. And then Precision Design Company, a set of joint bars for HO and N-scale. And Dave's Decals, custom-made stock decals for your layout. And that show is, they don't really have a straight-up topic. Basically, it's bricks, weather, hot cider, and working on the layout is underway. Come on in and check out and see what we have to talk about. So the live show is, basically the same thing. YouTube Model Builders is a proud sponsor of the eMag, Hangouts, and the live show. So anyways, when Thursday comes along, we have a general hangout that is with Johnny Reb. He comes on and they start a topic. He'll get quite a few guys in there, and they'll start talking model railroading, and they'll get a certain discussion going on, and they'll bring up a topic, and that's what they'll talk out. And then if they still have time, they'll bring up another topic, and then they go ahead and talk more about that. But anyways, I wanted to bring a little bit more up about the big build contest. I think that for the first time going on this, that's turned out really good. They have discussed it quite a bit. Um, the Eric Hall has done a very good job on putting this on. So I think YouTube Model Builders would like to thank him for that. And then the eMag that we've got going on, the latest subscription is out there now. If you haven't seen it, you should go check it out. Turned out to be a really good subscription or issue. So anyways, the further ado, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Chris, and we can get started on this. Now, all these guys in the panel that are on JMRI, this is something new that we're going to get started, and basically, like I said, the first two are going to be basic, and then we'll go into a little bit more detail, and I'll have different guys on for different systems, how to hook them up, how to operate them on different systems, as in the Sprague. Chris Healy has NCE. Troy has Digitrax. I've got Digitrax. Dave Vallejos has Digitrax. And then Andy Crawford has the Sprague. And we're going to bring another person on when we get around to Lynn's system. So anyways, here is Chris, and we'll see what we got going on tonight.
Okay, thanks, dude. As you said, I'm Chris Hiley, otherwise known as MRL Trains. You can find me on YouTube or Facebook or Google Plus under MRL Trains. And tonight we're going to talk about JMRI from the beginning. There's been quite a few guys that have requested it's how do I find it, download it, install it. And so we're going to start from the very beginning. So if those of you already have it loaded, just hang in here. Don't jump off. I'm going to start from the very beginning, just due to the fact that we're recording this for YouTube, so that people down the road, when they're just beginning, can watch this series of videos and see it all from the very beginning. So with that, most of you probably understand that, know a little bit about JMRI and what it is. I'm going to take you out. First thing we'll do is go out to Google and type in JMRI. It stands for Java Railroad Model Interface. It's programmed in the Java language, which to some of you might mean something, some of you probably not, but being programmed in the Java language allows it to be used across any system like Windows, Mac, any system you have, Java will operate on. So that's why it was written on, and that's where the J in JMRI comes from. But what you can do is just open a Google or whatever your favorite search engine is and type in JMRI, and you should see this JMRI, a Java Model Railroad Interface. That's the link that will take you to where you can download it from. So I'll click on that. And are you guys seeing my screen share?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is the home page when you get to JMRI's website, and JMRI is not a business. It's actually, they call this an open source or open source consortium. It's written by a bunch of people like you and me that are programmers that all work on it together. Nobody gets paid. It's all done for the love of programming and sharing with the world. So, the beauty of it is it's free, and it's all free labor by the guys who love doing it. So if you ever get a chance, if you're ever out on the forums and you see guys that were involved with programming, give them a big thanks, because they've really provided some awesome tools for us to use in model railroading, and they do it all just because they love to and they want you to have it for free. So this is the opening screen you'll get to, the home page for JMRI. And I recommend that before you do anything else, just kind of scroll down the page and take a look at it. There's not a whole lot on the first page other than a few of the things you can do with it. Right at the top, you're going to see the latest version. If you see where my cursor is, it says JMRI 4.0.1 production version. That's the latest one. If you can see right here, it says it was released on September 18th, 2015. So they're constantly updating these and changing the links on this homepage, so it'll probably be different the next time you go on it. They also keep older versions available, like if you look, now it's the next line down, says JMRI 3.10.1 production version. That was released way back at the beginning of the year. In between there were quite a few releases, like 3.11, 3.12, etc. What they do is they release beta versions that guys who have this up and running and are well familiar with it will download the newest version, test it, play around with it a little bit, and when everything seems to be good, they'll release it as an official production version. So,
is that what the development version is, Chris?
yeah, the
Is that
development version that you see on the right is already the next version. That's, you can download it, but there's no guarantee there won't be any bugs in it, or it could potentially cause problems. So it's out there for testing and trying, but it's not considered an official release. So yeah, that's a good question. Thanks, dude. So I recommend you always take the latest and greatest production version. Unless you have this up and running and are very familiar with JMRI, don't download a development version. And one other thing is, if you look at the description underneath this 3.10.1, it says it's recommended for JMRI users with computers that can only run Java 1.6. Later versions require Java 1.8. So the Java, as in Java Model Railroad, is also a piece of software you'll need to have downloaded and installed on your computer. And apparently, for some reasons which I don't know, some computers can only run up to version 1.6. So they've left this older production version available for you if that's the case. But if you have the latest version of Java, it'll be Java 1.8, in which case you can go ahead and use this newest 4.0.1 version. So just a little something. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say now, I guess you're downloading this on a Microsoft computer, right?
Yeah, I'm doing this on Windows, actually Windows 10 on an old laptop. So far it's been working. But depending on what version of Windows and how old your computer is, you might not be able to run the latest Java. And we'll take a quick run out to that website, and I'll show you how to download that too. As soon as
One thing I want to add is also, if you use a Macintosh or prefer to run Linux for some reason, or if you have an older computer that won't support the latest version of JMRI and wanted to run Linux on it, once you get it installed, the install process is different, but once you get it installed, JMRI running on a Mac or a Windows or a Linux PC is ultimately the same once it's installed, and you can run it on any of those systems with the same level of success once you get it installed. But the install process is obviously different from Windows, Linux, or Mac.
Yeah, so I'll be demonstrating the Windows version of the download, but it'll also, when you get to that point, you'll see that there are versions available for Linux and Mac also. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Or first I'm going to scroll down the page and show a few more things on this home page. These are links you might want to explore. It just shows you some of the things you can do with JMRI. Here they're announcing that they were at the recent NMRA convention in Portland, and there's some, if you follow these links, you'll find some clinics if you want to do a little learning. It looks like they talk about Digitrain's Android app for running. That's the latest smartphone app for running using a smartphone as a throttle. Most of you are familiar with Y throttle or engine driver. Well, this is a new one now called Digitrains that somebody wrote. Any rail, I'm not sure what that is. Here they're talking about MRC support for people that are running the MRC system.
Here's any rail lets you take the design of a software, like it's not SCARM, but think what you can do with SCARM where you design your layout. It lets you take that layout planning software that you've planned your layout in and that you're going to build it in, and then import that into JMRI to build panels and all this other stuff without having to draw it once to build it and then draw it a second time to control it.
Okay, so that'll be a good topic for one of our clinics down the road. As Dude said, we're going to be doing a series of at least 6 sessions talking about JMRI, starting from the beginning and working our way to all the different things you can do with it. So, yeah, I just recommend, scan this page, read it. Don't have to understand it all. Just do a little overview of it, and then when you run across something later, you say, hey, yeah, that's right, I saw that on the homepage. Let me go read about that. So this whole thing is huge, and I don't recommend trying to understand everything all at once, because you could spend 6 months trying to understand this entire program. But JMRI is a lot more than Decoder Pro. If we look on the left-hand side here, you see Decoder Pro. That's just one of the modules of JMRI. JMRI is actually a whole suite of different applications and tools you can use once you link your computer to your model railroad. So most people associate JMRI with Decoder Pro because that's all they ever use it for, and they kind of use the term interchangeably, but it's really not. Decoder Pro is just one portion of it. There's Panel Pro for making CTC panels to operate your layout. There's the Operations Pro, which is your layout panels. That's the line diagram type panels that you see, guys, like a more modern CTC dispatch or modern dispatching panel. Then if you read on the left here, all these general tools and cool uses. They have fast clocks and a speedometer and consisting throttles. You can actually run trains right out of JMRI like it's a throttle, and all kinds of neat things if you click on those links and read about them. Here's all the hardware that's supported by JMRI. So if you have any questions on whether your hardware is supported, you can click around there and read. Here's the computers that are supported. So it's very versatile, covers almost every platform imaginable, and there's a whole lot you can do with it once you get started. We're here to show you how to get started, so let's do it. I'm going to go ahead and download this JMRI 4.0 because I'm actually running on an older 3-point-something version. So even though I'm updating, it'll be treated exactly the same as if you were downloading it for the first time. So what I'm doing is exactly what you would do. So go ahead and click on that, and it brings you to a page this page is all about the 4.0.1 production release. And if you're interested, it'll tell you what the difference is from the previous version. If you just want to download, you see where my cursor is, it says download. Well, here it says Mac OS. If you click on that link, if you're running a Mac, click on this link if you're running Windows. So whoops, I didn't want to actually go ahead and click it yet, so I'm going to back up. Or if you're running Linux, here's a version for you for running Linux. And, as you scroll down, it'll tell you a few things about this latest release and what they did with it. But if you don't have Java installed yet, this is where you can go out and get Java, which we'll cover in a minute too. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on Windows version because that's what I'm running. And it takes you to a download page. You see in the gray bar here it says download will start in 0 seconds. Now on the lower left, I just covered up, you can see it's downloading. It's 65 megs, so depending on how quick your download is, it could take anywhere from a couple seconds to a minute or two. Now it's telling me I've got 25 seconds left.
Chris, can I say something real quick?
Sure. You got 17 seconds.
On my operating system, which is Windows XP, I downloaded the 4.0 version, but I had problems, clicking the download. So I wound up having to go to the direct link which is highlighted in blue,
Okay.
and that installed it for me.
Okay, good. That's a good tip for guys that are running XP yet. And that might be one of those cases where, I don't know, did you get it running successfully?
Oh yeah, it's good, doing good.
Okay, because you obviously were able to update to Java 1.8 then?
Right.
Okay, good. Because I was thinking maybe that's one of those cases where you'd have to use the Java 1.6. But
And actually, Java 8 1.8 is actually a pretty old version of Java, so the fact that they're supporting that far back is actually pretty good. I would have to say right now that the only consideration that you would need to keep the old version is there's a few things that they changed and broke in the new version that might require you to stay with the old version, or if you're running on a very old Linux system or just too old a hardware. Generally speaking, everybody ought to be able to run 4.
okay. So now that it's done downloading in Windows, I can just click on this say show in folder, or I could have went ahead and opened it, but it takes me to my download folder and it's highlighted right here in blue. And that's just an executable file, file name, and it ends in .exe. So I just have to double click this and it's now going to run. And it's actually it might be running in the background because I'm screen sharing. Let me take a quick peek here. It did start doing something, but well, at the moment it's not doing anything, so I'm going to just wait a few seconds in case it's I'm just going to go ahead and try it one more time. So I'll double click on that. That looks like, there we go. We'll go ahead and say yes. And you get to this setup wizard screen, and it's up to you to read that or not. I'm just going to go ahead and hit next because I've read this a bunch of times, but it basically tells you that it requires Java 1.8, and that it recommends you close all other applications before installing. Well, I can't do that because I'm broadcasting to you guys, so we'll take our chances. And it defaults to the typical places if you had it set up before. If not, you can accept the default folders that it gives you unless you really want to put it somewhere different. So I'm just going to hit the next button, and now it actually installs pretty quickly. It's not one of these programs that takes 5-10 minutes to install. You can see where right now it's copying a backup of my previous versions is what it was doing because I already had this installed. So all my data from my previous versions it kept, and then it's going to overwrite the actual program. So here again, this is your option install for anyone using this computer or just for yourself. Depends on how you have your computer set up. In most cases, you can just accept the default that it's giving you throughout all of these unless you want to do some custom setup. I just accept all the default settings, and now we're actually installing. While it's doing that, does anybody have any questions? I'll leave it up to you to monitor the chats because I've got my other windows open. I can't see them.
We do have one question from Dwight Chrisman. Hi guys, isn't it better to run the latest OS to keep up the virus definitions on updates? Or something like that.
Well, that's a little more computer than JMRI, but not necessarily. So right now, the safest Windows operating system from a virus perspective is probably Windows 7. So definitely not the latest version. Windows 10 is still a little cutting edge and has some issues, and may have issues with JMRI and other things because not enough people have been running it to test it. Although so far, everybody I know that's running Windows 10 is running JMRI without a problem.
That was going to be a question from my perspective. Is my boy keeps, I keep getting a message about updating my software to Windows 10, and he says, "You haven't done that yet?" And I'm like, "No, I'm afraid to, because I ran races for a long time, and every time I updated the software, I would go to a race and I would find a flaw in the software, a hiccup, and so I got to where I would do a mock setup at my house before I went, you know, and had 400 entries to deal with, and I have a problem with software.
Absolutely. You have to test run something, especially an OS version, and especially when you're dealing with a Windows OS version that's a major release, like from Windows 7 to Windows 8 or Windows 8 to Windows
Yeah,
10. That's a big deal. And programs like JMRI or that race software that you were using, these smaller proprietary things that aren't Adobe Photoshop or Microsoft Office, they're not tested as well, and they don't have as many people. And like Chris said, the guys who write this are doing it for free. So it takes them a little bit of time to get it all updated to Windows 10. So I would have said generally running JMRI, you would probably would have had held off from Windows 10 for a little while just to make sure everything stayed working okay. But as it seems, Windows 10 is working just fine with JMRI for everybody I know so far.
And one of the reasons is because it is a Java-based program. As long as the Java is compatible with Windows 10, the JMRI is probably going to run just fine. You
Yeah,
won't
there's
have a
some
lot.
security. Java security has caused a lot of problems in the past. So I know there's some Java programs that are not working on Windows 10 right now because Windows 10's default settings for Java security are too restrictive. But that doesn't seem to affect JMRI, but I know it affects a few other programs. Me and Jimmy were working on a technical problem not long ago when he went to Windows 10, and it was a problem with Java security, it turns out.
Okay, so now I'm done installing. So I'll just hit the next button again, and it tells me that it's all done, and I'll hit finish, and it's all installed now. So now you're going to say, well, how do I find it? Well, by default, I'm going to go to my desktop. I hope you can see this. Um, you see the little Decoder Pro, and then there's another emblem that actually went and moved it on me over here. Okay, there's Decoder Pro and Panel Pro. Those are the two icons for actually launching it, or you can go to your, and this is Windows 10 specific, so it'll be different for everybody, but if you go to your start menu, all apps, if I scroll down, you'll see JMRI right here. And it says new because it recognizes that I just downloaded a new version. We got Decoder Pro 3, Install Test, Panel Pro, Preferences, Sound Pro, uninstall, all kinds of things. My preference is I usually go in through Panel Pro, but we'll get to that in a minute. We're assuming that this is the first time you're ever installing this, so I'm going to go back to Windows, or to the Internet, and the Java page, the JMRI page, I should say. Now, if I tried to run that and I didn't have Java installed, it'll warn me and it'll actually prompt me to go out to that Java website, but we're just going to take a peek at it anyways. Let's see, somehow I got off of the page I wanted to be on, so back. Okay, this was the page we downloaded from. I don't want it to download this time, but remember this little Java link? So it says, that's not Java Cyan, that's not what we wanted. Oh, let's do it the other way. I'm just going to close that page and we'll open a new page. And we'll just type in Java on Google search. And lo and behold, the first one on top of the page, download free Java software from java.com. Well, that's exactly what we want, so we'll go there. Now, this is the weird thing with Java is they call this version 8, update 60, but in reality it's version 1.8. So it just depends on, it's kind of cryptic the way they do that, but I would always download whatever the latest version of Java is, and your computer will tell you if it doesn't like it. But unless you're running a real old dinosaur, you shouldn't have any problems at all running the latest version. So I'm not actually going to download and install this, but it's just like anything else. You'd hit the download button. As soon as it downloads, you go ahead and run it, and it installs pretty quick and easy with no issues. You know, if you've ever done any software installs, it's not different than anything else you've ever installed. So, all right, let's get back to my home page. So now we installed Java and we installed JMRI. Now we're going to go ahead and run it. So I'm going to click on my Panel Pro button, or I'll go ahead and do Decoder Pro 3 because that's what most people want to use it for first. Once I install it and run it, you'll see these little messages coming up. So it's telling me it's not connected to the layout. That's what the error message is, and you can just go ahead and say OK. It's taking a little longer to run, maybe because it's the first time. There we go. So when you open up Decoder Pro, the first thing you're going to do is, if you're not connected to your layout, you see how first it showed me my roster, but then it popped open this other window right away. This is basically the first window you want to look at anyways when you first get into JMRI. It's called your preferences. You got to set up all your preferences on how you want it to run. And basically on the left-hand side are all your options. Each time you click one of these, you get a different set of options to look at and set up. Most of them you never have to worry about until you start doing more advanced things. But the one thing you will need to do is set up your connections. And as Dude referred to, we're going to get to that probably in the next show, or if we have time tonight, we might take a little peek at it quick, because you really can't do too much with JMRI until you connect it to your layout. There are some things you can do, but they're not of any real value until you're actually connected to your layout. So this is going to be one page that you use all the time. And I'm just going to, you notice I have a tab called NCE, NCE2, and NCE3. Those are connections I currently have set up. If I want to, I'm going to click the plus sign, and that brings up basically a new tab that's blank. This is what you would see the first time in. It's going to ask you for your system manufacturer. So in my case, I would say NCE. Or if I was Troy or Dude, I would go over here and say Digitrax. You know, these are all the different systems that it actually supports. Atlas, Bacchus, CMRI, BCC Specialties, ESU, on and on and on. There's a whole big list of things that are supported that it will connect to and run with. So in our case, we want to connect to our command station so that we can talk to the layout, and we need to pick our command station. So I'll pick NCE. Within the NCE tab, excuse me, it wants to know which version of NCE are you running. You notice it says serial. If you're running if you have the Power Pro system, you'll be using a serial. If you're using a Power Cab system, like Dave said he just bought, you'll end up having to use the NCE USB. Then you have the one here that actually does allow you to do things without connecting to your layout. It's called Simulator. I'm going to go ahead and click that, because this is something handy that if you want to just play around with JMRI without being connected to your layout, this is really handy. Without this simulator, you wouldn't be able to do much of anything, because every time you try and do something, it's going to say, sorry, you're not connected to a layout, I can't do anything. So what this does is simulator actually runs as if you were connected to your layout. It's like a phantom command station, if you will. It's exactly that. It's a simulator. It lets you run JMRI without actually being connected to anything. So this is where you might want to start. The next two things, a connection prefix and a connection name, are just things that you can put in there. This connection name is actually what's up on the tab here. You notice this, if I go to this tab, NCE3, that's the connection name. NCE2, that's the connection name. The connection prefix is used in other parts of the program. I won't get into that quite yet, but it's if each one of these tabs has a different prefix, you'll be fine. If you duplicate it from another tab, you could have trouble. So.
Okay, I'm just going to interrupt here really quick here. While you guys are connecting, if you see right there in the where it says system connection right there, the serial port, sometimes that does not always go ahead and recognize as a serial port if you're using a USB, such as the Digitrax DS64. You'll have to go inside your computer settings, and there's a section there where you actually have to go ahead and configure that USB port in order for it to go ahead and work. I will have to go and do a little bit of research. It's been quite some time now since I actually had the problem, and I realized that there's other people that had it too. What I can do is go ahead and do for the next show, get something prepared for that as well, as far as how to find it and how to actually hook it up.
Yeah, we're going to get into all the gory details of these connections on next week's show. I'm just going to give you a little overview so you know what to be prepared for when we get there. So that's a good point, Troy. We'll look into, having to know what serial port you can connect to and whether you're connecting serial and I'm sure under Digitrax, I'm going to change to Digitrax. It's going to give you a whole different set of options. LocoNet, I'm going to assume that you have a LocoNet set up in order to connect to your command station. So beyond that, I'm not sure. And Troy is covering Digitrax and all that. Troy, do you want to mute? I'm getting a little feedback. Thanks. So play around a little bit with this connections thing, and if you notice, follow my mouse down here in the bottom where you see this red text. It says Service Mode Programmer, NCE is offline. Operations Mode Program, NCE is offline. Anytime you see that red text, you know that you're not connected. Even if you think you should be and something's not happening, first thing you do is look down below there. If that's red, you're not connected. That turns green when you actually do connect. And it's the same thing. If I'm going to go back and minimize this window and minimize this window, bring up the where's the normal start window? So I can't get my my screen sharing tab is blocking it, so I can't see it. But when you first open up that little JMRI window, it always runs in your background. But that'll tell you the same thing. It'll have a red text that tells you you're not connected, or green text that tells you you are connected. So it's really nice. You can see at a glance because of the color-coded text. It's really helpful.
Hey, Chris,
Yeah.
can you show them how to get to that preferences tab that you're in right now? From the
Yeah, I could. Oh, hang on. Here we go. Hide that. There. Now we're in business. The preferences tab, if I close this, I'll just say, yeah, I want to save my preferences. This is one thing, this is a good point too, and I'm going to show you this real quick. Notice it asked me if I wanted to save my preferences, and I said yes. You now must restart Decoder Pro. Every time you make changes and save it, it's going to tell you, do you want to restart, because they don't take effect until you do. So you do have the option of saying, no, I don't want to restart right now, but whatever changes you made won't take effect until you do. So I always just go ahead and hit restart. And now you'll see the little JMRI and then a connection not found. I say okay. And the reason it's doing that is because I had it set up to be running on my power cab last time, and now I have it set up for my main system. So this preferences window came up by default because I'm not connected, and it'll do that every time it has a problem with connections. If not, it'll come up to this screen. And to answer your question, Dave, you hit File, or Edit, I'm sorry, and Preferences, and that brings up this screen again. So one more time, it's Edit, Preferences, and here's your Preferences window.
Thank you.
So the next one, this Defaults tab, you really don't have to do anything with this until you start wanting to get tricky with this program later on. The File Locations tells you where it's going to save your files as you start adding things to JMRI. I would just accept the default locations for now, but here's a little trick that we can cover better later on, but I actually use Dropbox to save my files because I can access them from any computer at any time that's connected to the internet. So if you save your JMRI files on this, let's say the laptop I'm working on right now, if I save them on the hard drive on this laptop, I always have to be on this laptop. I have 2 laptops and a desktop here at home. If I say my wife is using this laptop and I jump on the other one, because my files are saved up in Dropbox, which is out in the cloud as they like to say, I can get on the other computer and access the same exact files from a different computer. So that's a little advanced trick that I like to use, and a lot of other guys are starting to do it too now. So otherwise, it's just telling you where it's saving your files, and some of the, if you get into Jthon is a Python type programming language that's really advanced, but if anybody's a programmer, this is where you're saving your, you can actually write things, your own little scripts to run in this program, but that's way too far advanced for us right now. So startup, here again, just leave everything at default for starters. As you get familiar with the program, you might want to make some changes. Display, if you really want, if you don't like the look, you can try some of these other settings and get a little different look to the program as it's running. There again, I just wouldn't mess with it. Messages, don't need to worry about that for now. Same thing with roster, throttle, Y throttle. This is if you're using your Android phone, or your iPhone, I should say, or iPad, or as a throttle, there's some settings you can set in there. The railroad name, this is one I would definitely recommend you do right away. So other than right now, we did connections, and you can jump all the way down really to railroad name as the next thing you really need to worry about when you first start. Go ahead and put in the name of your railroad. In my case, it's Montana Rail Link 3rd Sub, because that's going to use that name throughout the program in all different places where you can either print or view it on your screen. So if you want to have the name of your layout show up all over in JMRI, go ahead and type it in right here. Web server, this is something you use to actually be able to use your smartphones as a throttle and other Wi-Fi things, if you will. Here again, you don't really need to change anything until you get to the point of wanting to take the program beyond its basic use. And the same thing with warrants. So really, out of all these preferences, you don't even need to concern yourself really with anything except the connections. As a beginner, I'm talking now, connections, and if you want, go ahead and put in the railroad name. Well,
one thing I would mention while you're in this panel is the config profiles page.
Yeah.
Click on that. You can export a copy of this. It's like taking a backup. So you can click export once you get your railroad even basically configured. So if you're just learning this will keep you from screwing everything up by experimenting. So what you can do is take and click on the profile that you're using and click export and save it somewhere. Tell it to go to your desktop, and it'll drop a zip file on your desktop. Then you can go make all the changes you want, and if you screw something up and you're not happy with the results, you can just delete it and add existing and re-import it, and you'll be right back where you were. I also recommend doing this before you upgrade the version of JMRI, so that all the work that you've done to get all of your locomotives programmed in and all the settings programmed in, once we get further along, you'll want to take a backup of this so that if something doesn't go as planned, you will still have all of your settings and data and stuff that you spent a lot of time getting right. And it's really easy to do just by selecting, click export, tell it where to save, you've got it.
Okay, thanks, Danny. Good tip. All right, so I'm going to just review the connections real quick, because this is the thing we're going to hit hard next week, and you might want to look at and play around with a little if you have time. As you can see, like I said, I have 3 different tabs here, even though I'm only connecting to one layout. You're going to say, well, why do you need 3 different ways? Well, if you look at the first one here, NCE, and it says NCE USB, and what I really should do is just change this name to Power Cab. Those of you that are familiar with NCE know that there's a power cab. Somebody needs to mute. I'm hearing feedback. Okay, so NCE has a power cab, which is their beginner system, which is easily carried with you throughout your career if you like to, add to your system. But the power cab requires a USB connection, which we'll get into a little later. So I have a power cab, and I actually do programming away from the layout with my power cab. So I can sit upstairs on the couch if I want. I can do it in my workshop somewhere, anywhere. I can take my power cab and a piece of track, excuse me, connect it to my laptop and do some programming. So I have one connection for power cab. I also have a connection for the simulator, like I showed you before, for when I'm not connected to my layout or my power cab. I can actually play around with operations or add cars to my roster or work on my layout panel, just sitting with my laptop and not even connected to my layout in any way, or even my power cab. So the other one, I must have deleted my other one while we were goofing around before. So my NCE3 is gone right now, so no big deal. I'll just recreate it for you and show you how it actually works. So I have power cab, I have simulator, and now I want to connect to my Power Pro, which is the full-blown system with the command station and everything. So it's NCE, and it's going to be serial, because that's what that one requires, a serial cable, and I'll show you that with my video camera in a few minutes. It's going to ask me the serial port. Right now it's only showing one, so I'll go ahead and select that one. And I'll change the name of this one to Power Pro. I'm all done. Before I hit save, you notice this is the other big thing. Right down in this, where my cursor is, it says disable connection. If I put a checkbox in there, it disables that connection. I switched over to my simulator. You notice that check was already there. And when I switch to the power cab, it's not checked. And that's why I'm getting the red that we showed you before, because it's saying, wait a minute, I can't connect. And that's right, because I don't have my power cab connected. I actually am connected right now to my full-blown Power Pro system. So I'm going to disable that connection. It's going to stop looking for it. You can start JMRI, it won't look for that connection if you hit the disable. So looking back at my simulator, it's a simulator, that one's disabled. And now, I don't want to, well, it asked me that, I must have hit something, but I'm going to uncheck this one, because this is the one I want to connect. You can actually have all of them connect simultaneously if they are connected. I could actually connect a Digitrack system and have it connect to that too. The versatility of this JMRI is amazing. I could connect to 6 different layouts simultaneously and it'll handle it all. But anyone you don't want to connect to at any given time, just put the little check mark in there. So that one's disabled, this one's disabled, and this one is ready to go. So I'm going to hit save. And once again, it'll prompt me, do I want to restart? Because it won't, these changes won't take effect until I do. So I say, yep, let's restart. And in a matter of seconds, it's restarting. And if all goes well, you notice down here it now is in green. It says it's online. That means I know I connected to my command station. They're talking and they're happy. You notice the preferences box did not pop up this time. Now I have my roster screen. In your case, if you're first getting into this, this will be blank because you haven't entered any locomotives. But this is actually the Decoder Pro screen where you would use Decoder Pro to program your locomotives. And that's another topic we'll be getting into probably the 3rd or 4th week of this series, because that's what most people use JMRI for. The whole point of this exercise was to show you that I'm now connected to my layout with JMRI and can start using all the features of JMRI and start experimenting. So that's the whole key, is you got to download JMRI, you have to download Java, and then get it connected, and we'll get into the details of those connections next week. So, in the meantime, I'm just going to show you some of the other real...
Well, I think it's a good time to do a little commercial break for our sponsors and stuff like that.
That's great.
Time, and then you can, because I know that you're going to show some how you hook up your NCE unit and all that. I think you're going to show some pictures or something like that. So,
yeah, good.
Anyways, I want to remind everybody about the end of the big build contest coming up here at the end of the month, September 30th. I looked and there's 20 people that have entered into this contest. It looks like for the first time coming out, not too bad. We've tried to advertise it as much as we can without actually being called spammers, I guess, if you wanted to say it that. But anyways, yeah, Eric Hall from IMRROCOM, he has done a really good job on hosting this, and we'll see what the outcome is, see who the winner is. All of our sponsors is, YouTube Model Builders is sponsored by eMag's Hangouts Live show, and we're always looking for newer sponsors and stuff like that. But anyways, biannually, bi-monthly comes out the eMag, and our last issue just came out. And if you haven't seen that, go to YouTubeModelBuilders.com and go over into the eMag section and click on the link, and you can actually register. So the link will be emailed to you, so you could go right to the magazine. It's an online magazine. And then every Tuesdays and Thursdays, our Thursdays hangouts are just general, and they bring up a topic, and Johnny Reb, the host of that, he brings in some pretty good information, a lot of good topics they talk about. They just get in there and see what they're going to have for the topic. And once again, the Thursday nights, which has turned out really good. I want to thank Johnny Reb for doing that. And but anyways, after the first of the year, we're going to have some really good stuff going on, and we're going to have some good JMRI right now. It's going to be a lot of the basics, people. It's just going to be a refresher course, and then after the first of the year, we're going to really pound on JMRI. And so and there's going to be quite a few good guys that know and have different systems when they run JMRI, and that's going to be Andy Crawford, Chris Healy. Dave is really starting to get into JMRI. He really wants to learn more and more, and I know that Jim is in there too. Plus Troy with Digitrax, and then I'm with Digitrax too as well. So anyways, there's going to be a lot of more information when it comes to JMRI. We're going to be just barely being able to, you know, pinch the surface of the JMRI scene. There's so much about JMRI. So, but anyways, I want to go ahead and turn it back over to Chris, and we'll finish out this show. And any questions, any of you viewers that have any questions, just get into the Q&A, type them in, and I will go ahead and ask. And there has to be somebody on this panel that will be able to answer your question.
Okay, thanks, dude. So just to do a real quick 30-second refresher, it seems like we covered a lot, but a lot of it was just explanation for your benefit. But it really boils down to being as simple as I said as before the break. Download JMRI, download Java, get them up and running on your computer, and then set your preferences, and just those two items out of all those things. I know it looks scary with all those menus and all those options, but to really get up and running, you only need to look at those two that I showed you to actually get up and running. If you look at this thing as a 40-pound cake and somebody says, "Here, eat this baby," well, you know what? You can't eat it all at once. You start with one bite, follow it with another bite. Every day take a bite or two. Eventually, you can eat the whole thing, but you're never going to eat it all at once. So don't be intimidated by all the options and all the things you hear people talking about. Just approach it simply as, the main thing is to get it installed and connected and up and running with your system. And then just take the approach of, what do I really want it to do? Let me take that first bite. Okay, maybe first thing I want to do is just read my decoders out of my locomotives. Okay, I want to learn, then you're going to want to learn Decoder Pro portion of JMRI. And, don't try and read it all and understand it all before you do anything, because there is so much out there. You're just going to get overwhelmed, frustrated, and you're never going to want to look at it again. Just approach it from the aspect of one step at a time. This is what I want to do right now, and I'll work on that, and I'll ask a few questions if I need help, because there's plenty of us out here that are more than willing to help you. Just please don't get intimidated, because it can be very intimidating. Even the help out on JMRI, God bless them for all the help that they put out there, but they are computer programmers, and they write the help like computer programmers, so it can actually be a little more difficult than your typical help, because it jumps from here to there. And to be a programmer, you've got a different mindset than your average user would, and I'm not knocking them. It's just the way it is with programmers. They're going to write the instructions like they were writing it to another programmer, and they do try hard to also make it for the layman, of course, but even I, as kind of a more advanced computer user, struggle a little in the beginning, trying to follow all the instructions in JMRI. So just take it in little bites, little piece at a time, read it, experiment a little bit until you're comfortable, and then move on. And like I say, don't be afraid to jump on to Google Plus or come to one of these hangouts on a Tuesday night or a Thursday night and ask some questions. We'd love to help you. All right, I promised you I would show you the connections. And this is unfortunately going to be based on NCE. I know a lot of you guys are Digitrax or other systems, but remember I did a setting called serial when I connected to my, I'll take you over to the command station first. here's my command station, the Power Pro system that I was telling you about. And you see that big white cable? That's called a serial cable. For those of you guys who have been computing for more than a couple years, know what an RS-232 serial cable is. It's a typical computer, a typical cable used to connect computer or devices to your computer for many years. Nowadays the standard is USB, but before USB, serial cable was pretty much the standard. It's much bigger than a USB, as you can see, but that little cable goes right now just temporarily. It goes up the back of my layout and up to the ceiling, and I used to run into the other room, but I actually have it coming back across the floor to the computer I'm working on right now. So you see this cord right here, you say, wait a minute, that's a USB. I thought this was a serial cable. Well, that's very true. Unfortunately, the RS-232 serial ports on computers have gone the way of the dodo bird. So the solution is to buy this serial. You see the serial is the one that I'm tapping on here, the USB adapter. So the one end of my serial cable is plugged into the command station. The other end is right here in my hand, and it's plugged into this USB adapter. And then you can see a good old familiar USB cable running from here into my computer. If you're running NCE and you're going to run that serial to USB adapter, which you have to unless you have an older computer that has a serial port, then certainly you don't need the USB adapter. But like I said, those are pretty much, unless you've got a 10-year-old computer, you probably don't have a serial port.
Hey, Chris,
Yeah, go ahead.
now have they updated their box there so that you wouldn't have to use that? Have they made them so they have USB on them?
Supposedly the next version, the CS3 or something that's supposed to be coming out, will be. But no, as far as I know, they're still selling them with serial.
Oh, okay.
But here's the big thing is, if you have NCE and you're going to use this serial to USB adapter, buy this key span. There's a lot of them out there. You can go on eBay or Amazon and buy dirt cheap serial to USB adapters, but a lot of them have been known to have trouble. If you buy this branded, they're more expensive. You might spend $20 on them, where you could buy one for $5, some other cheap off-brand. But the key spans are basically 100% reliable. You know, everybody who's using them to connect JMRI to their NCE system says don't use anything other than the key span. Is the brand name, or actually I think it might be Belkin. But yeah, got any questions on that? I don't have the model number in front of you right now, but it's something like US 19 or something like that. But
See, on Digitrax, we don't. Our cable from the computer don't even go into the command station. It just goes into the PR3 and then interfaces onto that way.
yeah,
It's got the LocoNet too. I guess it's got the LocoNet
right.
too.
You're connecting through the LocoNet.
Yeah.
Different, and Troy will get into that on another time. But I just wanted to point that out for you guys that don't want to wait till next week to get started. If you have an old computer with a serial port, then all you do is buy a serial cable that's long enough and plug it from your computer to command station, and we go back in. I'm going to go ahead and start my screen sharing.
Chris?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, what about us guys with power cab? We just have to buy the NEC 22 or something like that. We don't have to mess with the serial adapter, correct?
Right, and I'll show you that one in a few minutes.
Okay.
So I'm going to go back to JMRI real quick here. And remember, to get to our preferences, we say Edit, Preferences. Now this might make a little more sense here. I go back to my Power Pro tab. So I get NCE, serial connection, and COM3. So once you download the software, install your cable, you come to this preferences and set this up. As long as you have a proper COM port, and you may only have one or two options. If it doesn't connect, let's say I have COM port 6 here selected, but I also had an option of COM port 7.
I'm sorry, Chris, but your volume's all scratchy again, like it was doing a couple weeks ago.
Okay, hang on one second. How's it now?
Same.
Okay. All right, let me switch real quick here. Stop sharing for a second. How's that? Any better?
Oh, way better.
Yeah,
Okay.
way better.
All right, so back to sharing. I don't know why it does that. All right, so on your preferences tab, if you have more than one COM port option and you select, like I was saying, if you have COM port 6 and maybe COM port 7, and it could be any number, just depends on your computer. If you go ahead and set it up and for some reason it won't connect, you still see red text down here instead of green text, tells you didn't connect. Go ahead and try the other COM port. Hit save and restart JMRI and see if it connects. And eventually you'll hit the COM port that works. It's got to be one of them that it's offering you. If not, then that's a little more advanced subject than I can get into tonight. But that's basically how you would connect with a NC Power Pro.
Hey, Chris, we got a question from Arthur Morgan. Hi, all. Is a control station needed to connect to the layout, or can it be bypassed by RC or Wi-Fi to dead rail layout?
Yes, it can, but you still, okay, you need a command station to decipher DCC signals, either way. Now, you can get away with dead rail, like what I'm doing. I'm battery powering my locomotives, but I'm still using DCC. You can get away with a very low end or very lightweight DCC command station like I do with the Sprague. You don't need a big, an advanced or more expensive, or actually the big difference is the amount of power that it has. You can get away with one of those, but ultimately you still will require a command station. Simple or not, you have to have one of some kind.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that you may want to do with the layout besides run the locomotive. That's, some of the things we'll be getting into JMRI are, throwing switches, the logic for signal lights, things like that. You still need to be connected to your layout for that. So dead rail is fine for your locomotives, not having to pull power from the rails is what he's referring to. It's basically a battery operated locomotive that doesn't pull its power from the rails. So yeah, you wouldn't need to connect to the layout to program a locomotive per se, but you still would want to connect to your command station or a Sprague, or at least through a PR3 programmer in Digitrax or something. If you want to, throw turnouts and have signal logic and run, block occupancy detectors and things like that. So
I would say the only differentiator, if you're talking about dead rail like what I'm doing, and a lot of people are getting really excited about right now, is that for the purpose of controlling locomotives, out of the back of all of the circuitry, the Sprague or the DCC command station or whatever you use, and you can use an NCE or a Digitrax or a Sprague to do the most common dead rail system, which is Tam Valley's. The only difference is the two wires that head to the track for a normal DCC head to a radio transmitter instead. That's the only differentiator. Everything else that Chris is talking about is exactly the same, except for those two wires, instead of heading to the track for power, head to a wireless transmitter. Only difference.
Right, and so I guess, yeah, like you said, technically you would still need to somehow get the signal from JMRI to the locomotive if you want to program the decoder in your locomotive. So, yeah, it's just rather than going through the rails, it's going to go through the air, so to speak, wirelessly. So, okay, that was a good, interesting question. Made us think a little bit about things I haven't thought about. So, thanks. Keep those questions coming. Okay, so I think I was going to go ahead and I'm going to bring back up the preferences. And remember the other connection I had, I'm going to jump back here quick and disable the connection I have right now, which was the serial cable connection that we just got done looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and put the check mark in and disable that. Then I'm going to go to my power cab system. This is the one Dave was asking about. Let me just gather up my pieces for a moment here and it's taking me a second here. Stop sharing for a second. Well, before I do, let me just review that screen for you, and then I'll show you the actual setup. But in your case, Dave, you're going to want to select NCE as the manufacturer, but now you're going to do it's called NCE USB.
It's Jim that has the power cab.
Oh, okay, Jim. Very good. I was sharing at the time. I guess I didn't. I thought I was thinking it was you, but NCE USB is the correct connection for a power cab because you actually have to buy a little USB adapter board. Now, don't confuse that with the USB adapter that I showed you for my serial. Even with that USB adapter, you still have to select serial. But for the power cab, you have to select this NCE USB. And then, once again, you'd have to select the COM port. My computer has dedicated COM port 3 for that, which isn't currently active because I'm not plugged in, and that's why it shows there in red. And then down here, you select the system of power cab, SB3 or 3A, Power Pro, the new Twin, or the SB5. For those of you guys that are NCE, you'll understand what those are. For the rest of you guys, those are just different models of command stations and systems that NCE sells. So in our case, we'll go with the power cab. And once again, I could change the name if I wanted to. I'm not going to. And I'm not going to enable the connection because I'm not going to physically connect it right now. But I just wanted to show you what you'd have to set up. Select NCE USB. Select the COM port. Oh, the USB version you have to select too because they now have a new version. That's right. I never had to do that before, but they recently came out with a new version of the USB board, which I'll show you in a second. So select what the older or the newer version that you have. Set this to power cab and hit save, and you should be ready to connect. Now, I have found this to be a little trickier connection and had a few more troubles with that than I do with the serial connection, but those are things we can talk about when somebody actually has those problems. I can walk them through it. Move my camera. Hopefully I don't get you too dizzy, but this little board is something I put together. We'll start over here. This panel comes with the power cab system. This is the little circuit board panel that you need to actually use your power cab. For those of you guys that aren't NCE, what a power cab is this is not only a throttle, but it has a command station built in it too. It's a 1.5 amp self-contained DCC system. All you need is this throttle connected to this little black panel, plugged in with your normal, I shouldn't say your normal, it's a different cable. And then there's a little wall wart that you plug into your, 120 in the wall and send the power into the backside here. That's all you need. That and 2 wires going out to your track, and you can run trains. So you have the little 120 wall wart, which I don't have sitting here, this panel, and this throttle. That's all you need to run a train. It's a complete command station, booster, and everything all built in. But in order to connect to JMRI, you need to run out and buy this little bad boy they call their USB adapter. I happen to have the older version, the 6.XX that they were showing in JMRI, but there is a newer version available now. So all you do is you plug in a cable from one port in this little plate into here, and then you run a USB cable.
And what cable is that you're plugging? Does that come with the USB adapter board or no?
No, you'll have to buy one or make one up.
And
It's
that's
the same. I just have an old phone cord here that actually worked just fine.
But it has to have 4 conductors in it. So it's a phone cord. A typical phone cord is what's called an RJ11, and that has 2 active conductors, or 2 little pieces of copper hanging off the end. An RJ12 is the type of connector that uses. And you can buy one of those at Walmart or Radio Shack. Just look at the picture of the little plug and make sure it has 4 little strips of copper in it, or 6 little strips of copper in it. And they're the type of wires that are used for multi-phone phone systems in offices, but they're very common today.
And actually, from
12 or is it RJ22?
I was thinking it was 12. I could be wrong.
I could be wrong. That's why I'm asking.
Seems like it's 12. But.
The one that runs from here to here only needs to be 4 conductor.
Okay, that's 12 then for sure.
Okay, so the one that runs from your power cab to here is the 6 conductor.
Yes.
Because that has the track voltage running through it also.
Okay.
Remember, this is command station and booster all in one. So those extra 2 wires are, if you put a 4-wire cable on here, you can actually use this as a normal throttle with, your full-blown NCE system. But by upping it to 6 cables, it actually activates the command station within the throttle. So
Chris,
that's why, yep.
In the power cab that I bought, it's got the coil cord.
Yeah.
As well as the flat. The coil cord is a 4-wire, and then the flat cable is a 6. So instead of buying something, I just use the coil cord to plug in from there into the USB adapter board?
Absolutely. If you don't plan on using this, they give you the coil cord so you can use it as a throttle on a full-blown system. If you go down to the club or you bring it to my house,
but you can have a booster or a command station, rather.
Yeah, but you can also use that coil cord for exactly what you said. I just happened to use this short one because I didn't want all the extra cord running around. But yeah, and on the back side of this, now you have just a typical USB cable that I go from here and I grab the other end and plug it into my computer.
Now, isn't that those don't have the same ends on them, do they? Isn't that like,
no,
more
actually,
like a printer USB?
I don't know what the new version has, but the older version I have, you notice the USB is more that square one that you used to get with some of your older digital cameras and stuff.
Well, that's a printer cable. That's a printer USB cable, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. There's been other uses, printers and cameras and
That's
such.
the same one. That's the same one Digitrax used too.
It's called a USB-B. A USB-A is the standard rectangular one that we're all really accustomed to plugging in, like a USB. That's an A.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is the other end that I plug into the computer, and that's your normal-looking USB. But yeah, you're right, Jim. That was a good catch. The other end is that more square one than a rectangular.
So the cable we need is a USB-A to USB-B.
Correct. And
both female.
And that's all you need then. You just plug that into the computer and and then you just have to play around in the settings in JMRI to get it all talking correctly. Now, I have had some issues with mine, and maybe because it's the older one, maybe that's issues that they corrected, but for some reason, all of a sudden, I'll have it connected and it'll just wig out, and all the writing on the throttle itself, you know, all the messages you get up here just turn into a bunch of squiggly weird characters, and it basically stops responding. And what I have to do is, the only way I found to fix it is to go back to my board here, unplug everything, and then plug it back in order. So, you know, maybe that's one of the reasons they came out with the newer version of that USB board. Maybe there was some issues with that or something, but it hasn't been as rock steady reliable as the serial connection is to the full-blown system. So, you know, I'd be lying if I said it was 100% reliable, because it's not. It's given me problems. Sometimes it worked great all night. Other times, every 10 minutes, I gotta unplug it and plug it all back in me, and I just never did figure out what causes it. But like I say, maybe that's one of the reasons they came out with a new version.
But if you're not running your JMRI software, you just run it off your hand controller. You can just unplug it off the.
Yeah, you don't even need it.
And you don't have a problem once you do that, correct?
Correct.
Oh, okay. It's only when you're running through that adapter board.
It's only when you're trying to run the JMRI, because you don't. Going back, you don't even need this piece if you're not running to JMRI. That's all you need this one to do, is to talk to your computer. You know, this you need to run trains. But you run from here to the computer, you know, that's the thing that allows you to talk to the computer. So when you're not connected to JMRI on your computer, you don't even need to, you know, I could just unplug this right there and it wouldn't know the difference, and, you know, I can still run trains. That's not an issue at all. But the reason I mounted it on a board like this is because I'll take this, and then you see this little board right here with the screws in the end of it? That's my portable programming board. So I take this board, I'll go upstairs and I'll grab that board and the power cab and the laptop, and I can sit anywhere in the house and program trains. You know, I don't have to be down at the layout. I don't have to be at my workbench. I can take those two boards and my laptop anywhere. All I have to do is run my track power from here to here with the alligator clips. In fact, you can see I actually have that same set of wires down here. If I want to program on this board right here, I have this set of wires with alligator clips right here. I just pull that out, bring it up on top here, clip to the two rails, and away I go. I'm programming. Because I actually haven't created my dedicated programming track on the layout yet, so I can either program with the command station or with my power cab on that little 3-foot board. And I just put those little screws on the end to keep any runaways from running off the end of the board. That's the only reason they're there. Any other questions or anything else we should cover tonight? I just, you know, wanted to give you that overview. We could look through, if you want to spend a little more time, we can look through some of the Decoder Pro. I'll bring back my screen sharing here. Some of the options that are in there. Or if Andy wanted to jump in with anything at this point, or Troy, if you want to share some Digitrax knowledge. But
most of the stuff you covered is the same regardless of the manufacturer that you're dealing with. Honestly, once you make the selection of what vendor you have, kind of all downhill from there. They all kind of work the same. You know, there's differences in power outputs and you know, things like that and how they'll function. But actually, as far as JMRI is concerned, once you've chosen the manufacturer and whichever system you've got, once it's in the system, it's just going to work in the system. That's it.
Yep. Okay, so once you got it up and running and you got your text is green down here, the first thing you're probably going to want to do is try programming or putting in your first locomotive in Decoder Pro. That's where just about everybody starts with JMRI. Now, if you pretend that none of these entries are filled in here, you would have a blank screen and it would be a bunch of blank lines. Let me see here. I was just going to scroll down and see if there's any. It doesn't even give me a blank line until I add a new one. But the first thing you want to do is, you see up here it says new locomotive. If I hit new locomotive, it's going to prompt me for what kind of decoder I have installed in it. And I'm gonna use Tsunami just because of the fact that people are going to look for. Oh, they actually fixed that. This used to just say Throttle Up and not Soundtracks, because Throttle Up was the name before Soundtracks. So I was going to show you that little gotcha. It's like, where's Tsunami? I can't find Soundtracks anywhere. I see they fixed that finally. But. So let's say we have a Soundtracks and it's a Tsunami Diesel. I'm just going to grab the generic one for now. And it's going to say read type from decoder. I mean, you don't have, I'm sorry, you don't have to do that. Hang on one second. I'm actually going to go ahead and connect those little alligator clips to my programming track and put a locomotive on it so that you can actually see this in action. Otherwise, it's just going to keep throwing errors at me if I don't have a locomotive on here and don't have it connected. Even though JMRI is...
Hey, Chris, you got some backfeed through your mic or something. Scratching noise.
How's that?
Sounds better. Way better.
Okay. No, actually what I was saying was if I'm actually connecting those alligator clips I showed you to that programming track that I showed you. Because if I try and, even though I'm connected to my command station, if the command station is not connected to a piece of track with a decoder on it, it's going to keep throwing errors at me. It's going to say, hey, no locomotive found, no locomotive found. So I'll go ahead and put a locomotive on the track, and then you'll see it actually all work correctly. So I say this is my first locomotive ever. I'm going to say new locomotive, and I don't even know. I bought this locomotive at a swap meet. The guy told me there's a decoder in there, but he doesn't know what kind. Here's this little button right here. It says read type from decoder. If you click on that, it'll actually search through all these options of different brands of decoders and throw some recommendations at you. Well, it's telling me that it's a North Coast Engineering or an NCE, silent running with torque compensation. The only thing is it doesn't know which model. There's a whole bunch of them. It just knows it's one of these. So at this point in time, you just take your best guess. But there isn't really a whole lot of difference between any of them, so you'd be pretty safe to pick one like the D13 SRJ. And I'm just going to pick that to show you where it moves on from there. As soon as I pick a type, it brings up this other little window next to it. It says roster ID, and I can go ahead and I'll put in a number, and I'm going to put a bogus number in because I actually have this locomotive in here already. So I'm just going to say 6500. And you notice it actually found, see this 2226? That's the actual address that's in there. So it interrogated the decoder, found an address in there, and displayed it for me. So I'm going to leave it at that. More than likely, if it was a brand new decoder, it would say this, 3. because that's what all decoders are factory programmed to. And it also asks you, do you want to run this digital only or DC conversion enabled? I always leave mine digital only because you don't have to worry about any runaway trains that way. But there again, that's another whole subject that can get complicated, but it's a matter of, if you ever heard of run on DC, some guys used to have half DC, half DCC, and it would actually allow a locomotive to switch over from DCC to DC. If you turn that off, it won't. So I'll go ahead and hit save. And what it did was it created a new entry for me. You see the top line here? ID 6500, that's what I told it. Address 2226. Decoder model is a D13 SRJ, because that's the one I picked. I didn't bother to fill in a road name or road number because it didn't ask me any of that stuff. It did put in my name and the date, only because somewhere else in JMRI I had already put in my name. In fact, let's look for that real quick. Settings, preferences, and somewhere in here, I don't remember exactly where, so bear with me while I search for a second. If anybody remembers.
Yeah, it's road name down, third one from the bottom.
Well, that's a railroad name. That wasn't my name.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere in here, and it might not even be in Decoder Pro. It might actually be in Panel Pro, one of the other settings. But there's a place where you can put in your name, and now you see it automatically populated my name as the owner. You can change it if you want. But anyways, now that we have that, I'm going to make this full screen to make it easier to show you. Now that we have that record, and we want to go ahead and start programming the locomotive, I skipped one little thing before that I shouldn't have. You notice on the lower right here it says programming track, programming on the main, or edit only. This is pretty important. If your command station is hooked up to a programming track like mine is right now, when I go ahead and program this, that's what it's going to do. It's going to go to the programming track and read from the programming track. If I switch this to programming on the main and I try to go read a locomotive, it's going to try and read every locomotive on the layout, and it's just going to get all confused and throw a bunch of errors at you. Or if I choose edit only, I can go ahead and edit my information without changing anything. Doesn't matter if I'm connected to the layout or not. I can change information in here, and I'll show you that. It's easier than trying to explain it. I'm just going to go ahead and set this on programming track, and I can double click any one of these records now that I have it here. You can either double click it, or you can just go ahead and click program down here once it's highlighted. So you select the locomotive you want to program, you come down here and you say programming track, programming on the main, edit only, whichever one you want, and then you go ahead and hit the program button. So now we're getting into the meat of it. This is all the information about that locomotive and all the different CVs that can be changed within that decoder. That's the whole reason you have to select the type of decoder you want, because what's on each of these tabs is different depending on what brand of decoder and model of decoder you have installed in your locomotive. So way back in the beginning, when we said new locomotive and we picked the correct brand and model, that's why we have to do this, because once you get into programming that, what's on each of these tabs will be different depending on what the capabilities of that decoder are. So the smart guys at JMRI who wrote all this actually get a copy of each decoder, and they have to program each of these decoder definitions, they call them, for each decoder that's ever released on the market. So they have to figure out what CVs are in the decoder, what they do, and then create these pages to allow you to program them quickly and easily without having to know all the numbers of the CVs and all that. So thank those guys for all their hard work, because they make this simple for you. Trust me, they're making it really easy for you. So first thing we do is open up the tab on the left called roster entry, and remember that I typed in 6500 and my name came in and the model number. That stuff was automatically put in here when I entered it before. Now I can put a road name. I'll make it Sue, because that's what it is. And the road number 6500. Manufacturer. I think that was actually a slow 2000.
By the way, your owner name and some of those things come in once you've started putting things in your roster. You can put that in there, and it remembers the history. So if you're just one owner of a layout, you'll go put your name in, and from then on, it'll populate that and remember it. Or if you this is not very handy for a single person's layout per se, but on a club, you can keep track of who owns what equipment this way.
Right. Or in my case, I do a lot of programming for other guys, and I'll keep the program just in case they bring it back to me one day, and say something doesn't work. I can look at the program and see why. Not that I would necessarily program it back in, but I can see what it was supposed to be set at. So, I go back to my roster. You can see here's Bob Hackle. That's my stepdad. We're down here, Andrew Gray, Peter Turk. Those are friends of mine that I've done some work for, and went ahead and programmed them in there. So I put their name in there. You can actually get fancy and filter this out, so you only see yours or you only see somebody else's too. You don't have to scroll through the whole list if you don't want. So there's some of the things as you play around you'll find out. But getting back to this screen, I always just put the basic locomotive information on here. You can put a comment in here if you want. You could put a comment about the decoder in here, like, I bought this for $10 at a slot or something. Anything you want to put in there to help you remember something, you can type in there. And go ahead and just hit save to roster. Just like any normal computer work, you can't save often enough, because as soon as you don't save for a while and something crashes, you lose it all. The next tab is this basic tab. This is commonly known as CV29. If you know a little bit about decoders and CVs, CV29 is your configuration CV. Some very basic information the decoder needs to know. And every decoder has this. This is not different depending on what brand you buy. This is a standard CV that is actually defined in the standards. So it basically, are you running a short address or a long address? What is the address? The primary address, which is a short address. The extended address, which is the long address. You want the locomotive to run in the normal direction or reversed. This is where you could actually tell it to run backwards when you're in forward, so to speak. 14 or 28 speed steps. Well, you almost always want to be 28, 128, unless you have some ancient decoder that belongs in a museum that still runs on 14 speed steps, or I should say a command station that belongs in a museum, like a really old MRC, what did they call it, Command 2000. That only ran on 14 speed steps, but always set this to 28, 128. If you set it to 14 speed steps, you're going to see your headlight flashing on and off. I won't tell you why, because that's too detailed for tonight, but trust me on that one. Set it to 28, 128. This NMRA digital only, that's the one that we talked about earlier. The DC's, you know, on the first screen when we had the option. I always leave mine set to NMRA digital only because it prevents runaway locomotives when you fire up your system. It's a common problem. The guy goes and turns on his layout and all of a sudden a locomotive takes off. Runs off the end of the table, crashes into something. Unless you're one of those guys, in which case you probably aren't watching this anyways, that runs DC with their DCC, always leave this set to NMRA digital only. That's what they're saying, is this locomotive is never going to run on anything but a DCC layout. So, the rest of these things over here are manufacturer's ID and version and a couple other, like if it has decoder lock capability that keeps you from accidentally programming it when it's on the layout. But the one other thing I wanted to point out, and this is very key concept to Decoder Pro, this is fundamental 101. You notice the yellow versus the orange versus the blue, only because that was the one I selected. When you first open Decoder Pro, any record for a locomotive that you've ever had before, you'll see that everything is in yellow. If I change these tabs, the background for everything is basically yellow. What that tells you is that at this current time, JMRI can't guarantee that those are the numbers that are in your decoder. It's telling you this is what you left it set at last time you exited the program, but I don't know for sure because I haven't read the locomotive right now, so I don't know for sure that that's what's in the locomotive. It's a very important concept. Just because you type these numbers in doesn't mean anything. They haven't been written to the decoder, or somebody may have changed it, you took it to a different layout and somebody reprogrammed it. Just because you have a record in JMRI and you have that record saved doesn't mean that's the current state of that decoder. The only way to ever really know that is to go ahead and read the decoder. And I'm going to do that right now. You see this set of buttons on the bottom? Oh, before I do that, you see the orange ones? The orange ones mean I just made a change. It changes from yellow to orange to tell me that, okay, since you opened up the program, you have now changed something. Remember I went up here and clicked this and I put in address of 2226. That means I changed something. So this orange tells you that something got changed and needs to be written to the decoder if you want to keep it, or, you know, hasn't been sent to the locomotive yet. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to real quickly write that so you can see the other colors. But if I hit this button that says write the changes on this sheet, it turns red while it's writing. And now you see the other ones that were orange turn white. Once they're white, that means, okay, I can confirm that right now. I just read that decoder or wrote to that decoder, so I know for a fact that those are the numbers that are in that decoder right now. The ones that are yellow are still yellow because we didn't read it. I'm going to back up. See this button right here? It says read changes on sheet, or read full sheet, or read all sheets. It's just a combination of the same words used different ways. So if I read full sheet and click that, right now it's going out to the decoder one at a time, and you can see them changing colors. And it's actually reading the decoders. Now they turned white because it says, I just read the decoder. I know for a fact that's the number that's in the decoder. Now I want to go and change this address. I'll make it 2227. As soon as I hit the enter key, you notice that that turned orange. Okay, now it tells me, hey, Chris, you made a change, but you haven't written it to the decoder yet. So that color tells me that. I might be going along changing a bunch of things in here. I'm just gonna maybe change the headlight function or something. Right here, I'll put something in there. Okay, that one turned orange. But I might be programming from tab to tab to tab, and all of a sudden I come back to this one and it's like, oh shoot, there's orange. I didn't write that one yet. So then I can go ahead and write changes on the sheet. Turns red momentarily while it's writing it, and now it turned white. So always be aware of those colors. Yep. Yellow means you haven't read it or you haven't written to it since you've opened this session of JMRI. White means either JMRI read it or you wrote to it, so it's confirmed that that's the number that's in there. Red means there's a serious problem or it's in the middle of programming. So,
Chris,
yeah,
some decoders can't be read back. That's true, right?
that's true.
And some command stations can't read what's on a decoder either.
That's true, but in which case this is a mute subject because you're not going to connect JMRI to that command station either. If it can't even write to a decoder, there's no way you're going to be able to connect JMRI to it.
Well, I mean, it could write it, but some of them won't read it.
Well, that would be the decoder, not the command station. I don't think there's any command stations that'll write but not read. If there are, then they must be a real entry-level system that...
Well, dude was saying that he got a different command station than the one he had because it could read and write. And like the one I have, the DB150 from Digitrax, can write, but it can't read it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the same one I had. Was the 150 you can write, but you can't read. But Digitrax, like Chris said, you're not tying in to the command station to program the decoder because you're on a program track. And so now if you're going to try, I haven't tried it, but if you're going to program on the main line going through the command station, you can write to it, but you can't read it if it's on the main line and you're going through the command station.
Right. Any of the systems with program on the main will write but not read. But when you're on a programming track, that's the whole purpose of a programming track, is to be able to read and write. So
yes,
you know, like I said, I guess I wasn't aware that Digitrax had a system that would write but not read. That just to me defies logic, but.
Well, like you said, it's more of a entry level, and I want to say it's like a $75 difference between the two command stations if you bought them brand new, you know.
Okay.
And so.
All right. Well, that's interesting. See, I learned something too. That's what I like about this. I get to learn right along with you guys. All right. So. Real quick, I'm going to file save. And I'm going to close this. And you can just hit the little X up here after you save. And just to show you those colors again, I'm going to go ahead and reopen that same file. So I highlight the one I want to open. I go down here and I make sure I have programming track checked in this case. And I hit program. And you'll see now everything's yellow again. And once again, you know, they're making a liar out of me because this first page, nothing turns colors because that's only information for you. That has nothing to do with any CVs. This is just a page of information for you to know some things about the locomotive and the decoder. So these will never change color on this page. Now, once you get to the rest of these tabs, you see how everything's in yellow again because I just opened this sheet or this decoder definition, and it doesn't know. It's telling me, hey, you haven't read or written as of right now, so I can't guarantee you that this is in the decoder. So what you can do, what I typically do when I'm sitting down, is I go ahead and I'm going to see the button here. It says read all sheets where my cursor is. If I click on this right now, it's going to go read all of these tabs one at a time. And I'm actually going to do it because this is an NC decoder. I know it's only going to take a few seconds, but if you're running a Tsunami or a QSI or some of the other sound decoders, it can actually take quite a few minutes. But I know it being an NCE, it'll read real quick, so I'm going to go ahead and hit that just to show you. And if you look down by my cursor, it says reading, and it'll tell you which CV it's reading, and then it quickly changes when it finishes reading it and moves on to the next. So what it's doing right now is quickly reading all the CVs in the decoder, and it's going to update. If whatever you have typed on any of these pages is different than what's in a decoder, it'll change it. And once again, it'll color code that to show you that. Well, maybe it won't. No, I think of it. It's getting pretty close. Now you can see it's just reading the page we were on because those numbers or those colors just changed. And if you notice too, for a second there it said stop reading. If for some reason you want to stop it, you can just go ahead and stop it. But it's done already now. If I click on every one of these tabs, everything is white. It just read those in and it's happy now. It says, okay, I've talked to the locomotive. I know these are the right numbers. Everything is good. So now I can start making some changes again if I want. I'll, maybe change the address back to 2226, and you see it turned orange. I'll go to the motor and I could change. I'll put in some acceleration. I'll make that 10 and deceleration 5. Or if I wanted to activate the speed table, I could click that button. And, whatever. This part I'm going to leave up to you to play around and experiment with what each of the CVs does. But I wanted you to understand this color coding because it is so important. But now it's orange again, telling me that, hey, Chris, you made a change, but you haven't written it to the decoder yet. The same way I did read all sheets, I can actually write all sheets, which means every one of these tabs. So let's say I made changes on this tab. I made changes on this tab. I made changes on that tab. And I don't want to go write changes on sheet, change the tab, click write changes on sheet. I can just go ahead and write all sheets. Now it's going to go tab at a time and write all those changes all at once. And it's only writing what I changed. It's not writing every CV that's in here. So now if I look back, everything is white again. So that means, hey, you wrote everything. I know what everything is. We're all happy. Okay, and then just going to quickly review these buttons. There's basically 3 options. There's read changes or write changes, which means anything I changed. So I'm going to go back and use this one as an example again. I'll go back to 2227. If I hit write the changes on the sheet, it's only going to write those 2 things that are orange. My other option is to write the full sheet, which means it's going to write the orange ones and the white ones. And the third option for writing is to write all sheets, which means every tab. Actually, there's a 4th option now. It's to write changes on all sheets. So it's just combinations of the same thing. Do I want to write just the changes? Do I want to write everything on this sheet? Do I want to write changes on all sheets? Do I want to just write everything? Well, you want to be real careful about writing everything when it comes to sound decoders, because you could be there a long time in some cases. You can literally be 5 to 10 minutes to write every CV to some of the sound decoders. So if you're using a non-sound decoder, it's usually pretty quick. But I just get in the habit of write the changes on this sheet or write the changes on all sheets, but not write everything. So, and the read is exactly the same. You can read the changes on the sheet, you can read the full sheet, or you can read all sheets, or you can read just the changes on all sheets. I don't know why they have read changes, because if I changed it, why do I want to read that? You know, that, unless it means that if it reads it and it's different, but that's the same as reading all sheets, so I never quite understood that one.
That's mainly for JMRI over network. So if you go to your the screen where you set the device you're going to connect to, I have a couple JMRI systems that all communicate with each other over network. If you're going to run multiple of those, you have to be able to read changes in from the master system. So my master dispatch system is running JMRI, and I have JMRI running on a few other systems. My master dispatch system has my SPROG set as its device, but my other systems have JMRI network chosen as its device, and they talk to the central JMRI. That's the only real reason I can think of why you would use that, is using multiple JMRIs in collusion together.
Okay, that would make sense. So, that's, without getting into the details of every CV, that I'm going to leave up to you. There's plenty online about all that, and usually get a book with your decoders too that'll tell you what all the CVs are. But this is how the basic way to use JMRI to read and write changes to your decoders. So, let me just take a quick peek and see if there's a few other options in here. You can print the CV values if you want to print out a hard copy and keep it for any reason, and I'll do the print preview, which is the same thing. If I do, it actually generates this nice little table with a CV number and the value that you put in it in both decimal and hexadecimal. You can, hexadecimal is for those that use Digitrax that like to do it the old and fashioned hard way, but you can actually import or export these files for use in either other programs or to take to somebody else's system. You can play around with those options. There's a factory reset, which is like the nuclear option, only if you're really having difficulty. And of course there's help and about Decoder Pro. So there's not a whole lot in, and this is the Decoder Pro 3 they call it. So, but once again, when you're done, you just hit File, Save, and you go ahead and close it. And now it's warning me because I had some orange changes that I had made but didn't write. It says, do you want to write those to the decoder? If not, they're going to be lost. In this case, I'm just going to say, go ahead and close it anyways. I don't care. But if you really did care, then you'd want to cancel, go ahead and write them, and then save and exit. When you get back to the main screen, there's some more really cool options in here. Let's say you bought two locomotives at the same time. They're both SD40s, and you put the same brand of decoder in them. And you went through all the trouble of reading and creating a file for the first one. And the second one is almost identical. You can use this duplicate local. What that'll do, you see right now I still have that one we were working with highlighted. See where it's highlighted in blue here? 6500. Not the window thing, but here. If I go ahead and hit duplicate locomotive, it's going to say, okay, give me an ID for the new one. I'll call it 2228. Say okay. you see there's a new record that just popped in at the top, and it's 2228. If I go ahead and hit the program button down below here again to get into that locomotive, you're going to find that it's pre-populated with all the same exact settings that were in the one I copied from. So if you did a whole bunch of setup with your lighting and some other things that you know it's going to be identical in the next locomotive, you can just copy that record and save yourself a bunch of programming. So that's a neat little shortcut. If you want to get rid of any of these records, like I said, you know what, I really didn't want to duplicate that one, I can go ahead and delete it. Of course, it'll ask you, do you really want to do this? Yep, it's gone. And then here again, it's the old preferences that we were looking at before. Preferences, let me save changes. Do you want to save them? No. Then you can create what's called roster groups. For instance, over here under owner's name, I have a bunch that are mine, and I have ones that belong to other people. I can create a group that shows me only my locomotives that I own. Or let's say I have a whole bunch of SD40s and some SD45s and some GP40s. I could create a group that's just SD40s. So I'll say, show me just the SD40s. Well, you notice on this page I have to scroll up and down to see all the entries. I could just open that roster group of SD40s and not have to see all the locomotives I have, including ones that belong to other people that aren't even on my layout. So the roster groups are kind of cool way to filter and not have to see everything in front of you at one time. Then there's all kinds of other advanced tools in here that, as you get better with JMRI, you might want to use. If you're curious what any of them are, I recommend going either to the help here or going to the online help and reading about it. Power Pro, this gives me some settings that are unique to my NCE Power Pro system. If you're running Digitrax, you won't see them, but I'm assuming there'll probably be a tab there that says Digitrax and has a bunch of settings like show cabs. Well, right now I don't have any cabs plugged in. Let me just turn on my wireless throttle and see if it shows up on here. I've never actually played with this. I'm just kind of looking at it right now. So for the first time, show all cabs, refreshing. Oh, there we go. So I just turned on my wireless Pro cab, and sure enough, there it shows up. And it even tells me which locomotive I have it addressed to right now, what mode it's in, 28 speed steps. So it's kind of neat. It showed me what type it is, what locomotive is called up on it right now. And I imagine, let's see, once I'm going to hit function F1, and if I refresh this, you see a little check mark just showed up in F1. So it'll actually tell you, you know, what functions you have activated on your throttle at the moment too. So what the value of this is, I'm not sure, but it's kind of neat. And there's all kinds of tools like that. There's speedometer. There's something, if you actually put sensors in your track, whether it's an infrared sensor or a light sensor, you know, make or break light type sensor. If you put two of them a certain distance apart, you can actually use it as a speedometer. So you could vary between your ties a little infrared sensor or a light sensor. Two of them, let's say 2 scale feet apart. JMRI, you can connect those to JMRI, and then it'll act as a speedometer by measuring how long it takes to go from one sensor to the other. So you could literally have a speedometer up here. If you have a certain section of track where you don't want your operators to go too fast, you could bury some sensors in there, and while you're sitting at your dispatcher's panel, have their speed pop up on the computer, and you call on the radio and yell at them for speeding. So, this is one of the
So what do
things
you
you can
think, Chris?
What's that?
I said, so what do you think?
Think of what? Speeding? Or what I
Getting
missed?
about that time.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm good. I'm just kind of filling in time here, so. Yeah. Let me exit out of this. And all right, I'm back. Hopefully that's more than you ever wanted to know about getting started. So.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chris. Chris, you brought in a lot. You too, Andy. And I think we kind of lost Troy. He lost his headset, and
No, I'm back now.
oh, you are back.
Yes, I got it up and running. I had to do some soldering.
Got your soldering iron out?
Yep.
Sweet. Once again, I want to thank all of our sponsors and YouTubeBondleBuilders.com, the eMag, of course, our Tuesday and Thursday night hangouts, our monthly live show with Bill Graham and Barry Rozier. Of course, our Tuesday night presentations have changed, and I think everybody knows that by now, that Gino is every first Tuesday of every month. Troy's the second Tuesday. I'm the third. Barry, and then I take over the Slack one that's set up if there's 5 Tuesdays of the month, which there has been. So, matter of fact, this month, next Tuesday, will be a double header from basically me, but I think I found somebody that's going to take my position. I've got some things I need to do next Tuesday. But anyways, I want to remind everybody, too, about the big build contest. The end of that, pretty soon we're going to find out and see who the winner is to that, because the ending of it is September 30th. Now, I don't know if that's the deadline to get the videos in. Matter of fact, I think it is the deadline to get the videos in and all that. And then they'll produce the winner out of the 20 contestants that have signed up to do the big build. And I want to thank Chris for coming in, Andy, Troy, and Dave, and all the other panel members. I think we got a couple late bloomers there at the last minute. And so until next time, thank you very much.
Great show, guys.